You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today, man, we have another amazing show lined up for you all today. We're going to have a special guest. We're going to talk about something that I think everyone is hungry for. Man, we have a special guest, Mike Acker. He is executive communication coach. He is also a corporate trainer and traditionally published author. He is everywhere. I mean, you go to his website, myacker.com. You can see all the amazing big brands that he's been associated with. He has a recently released book that he published, Speak with Confidence, that we will touch on in this interview. But first and foremost, I want to welcome you, Sir Mike, to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing really good. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to giving something of value to your audience here today.
Awesome, man. Man, first and foremost, we all love stories. So give the audience a little bit of a background and what inspired you to do what you do today.
So let's go back in time before I was born, because our stories are built on the stories of those who come before us. And my dad was a drug smuggler. He met my mom. She was a witch. They were at a party together in Tucson, fell in love. They started traveling the world, selling drugs before the cartels. So they were going down to Mexico. My dad learned how to fly planes and learned how to speak Spanish so they could go down to Mexico and other places and cut out the middleman and bring it all back up. Yet, even though it was super lucrative and lots of adventure, lots of boats, lots of planes, they wanted to start a family. And so when they started looking at the family, they started thinking ahead. And this is something I like to tell people again and again when I'm kind of more on a motivational, inspirational type talking. I'll say this: the choices that you make your life and the life of those to follow. And they're looking forward and going, man, this is not the best life for our kids to come into. And so they made a radical change. They started to sell drugs, but they were legal drugs, AKA coffee. The coffee company took off. They were doing that for a while. But my dad's working full-time entrepreneurship, not seeing my sister and I very often. And it was that point in time, we were in Kona, Hawaii, and we were with the Love family, which is a hippie commune. My parents were total hippies. It's the early 80s. And they had this dramatic, almost instantaneous life change where they chose to become Christians, and not the type of just political or just go to church, but like, let's get in and serve the poor and needy. Let's take care of people. So my parents, radical type people, said, let's go all in. And they had sold the company, and we took off to Eastern Asia, where we traveled to Manila and the Philippines, and we went to South Korea, we went to China, we smuggled Bibles into China in 1985. And for all those listening, especially if you're younger, in 1985, communist China was not a place that you wanted to bring Bibles. Yet we smuggled it under there, and they used the kids' backpacks and the kids' suitcases to carry it in. Now, we come back to the United States and we settle in. And right here, this is one of those early pivotal moments in time where I've been traveling the world, doing all this kind of stuff, and now finally going to go into traditional school, kindergarten. And I had a speech impediment. And I've all these adventures, all this experience, but now I'm around peers. And all of a sudden, that consistent nagging, what'd you say? What'd you mean? What'd you say? Got to me. And I went to my mom, I was like, I got to do something about this. And we went to a speech therapist, and I couldn't say the sounds "ja." I couldn't differentiate between shoulder and soldier. And right there, I worked on it and worked on it, worked on it, worked on it, got to a spot where I finally could. Now we settled into this life. My parents became just good people, solid people in the community, board members. My dad picked up a law. I didn't even know my parents had this adventurous, crazy lifestyle. I got to a spot where I could overcome this deficit. I'm speaking at poetry contests as a kid. I'm doing expos and different things like that with spelling bee. And then my dad comes home from work and he says, I quit my job. Now, everybody right here, never do this. If this is you and you're thinking about quitting your job, talk to your family beforehand and don't drop it at the dinner table. He says, I quit my job. We're moving to Mexico. My mom and dad got up, went into the other room. I'm sure they had a lot to say to each other. Came back a while later. Food is cold. And we started planning our trip to Mexico. And what was supposed to be 9 months turned into, for them, 13 years. turned to me for the rest of my schooling there. And right after I'd gotten confidence speaking on stage, I moved again down to Mexico to learn another language. I got dropped in. Oh man, I got dropped in right in downtown school, all Spanish speaking. I didn't speak anything like Spanish. If you could see me, I was long, blonde haired, gangly, huge buck teeth, and just awkward kid. And I was now in a school where I stuck out. So my story of becoming a public speaker and becoming a business leader, well, when I saw my parents do businesses, start a nonprofit, and then I had to overcome these different experiences. And in Mexico, the experience I had to overcome was how to get up on stage and how to speak without completely losing everybody as someone who didn't pick up Spanish fast. Finally, I did. We can go into that story. There's some more fun things there later on if we want to. And I finally, right when I got really comfortable and became more Mexican than I was American, y si hablo español. And when I got back to the United States to go to college, I had to learn all over again. And that was when I took debate classes and communication classes and really became a national debater, which launched me into a public speaking career. And now I've written several books and I have a couple of different companies. And my whole goal is to help people realize their potential no matter what type of venue I'm in, here on a podcast, on the radio, or with my books or public speaking. That's my goal. So that's the short of it, built on the story of my parents. Now I'm building my own story.
Once again, this is Unread Focus Radio, talking to our guest today, Mike Acker. And man, that sounds like a movie. I mean, I don't know if you're going to plan on making a movie one day, but I think that could be a hit. Now, I want to go back a little bit to Mexico, because it sounds like that was a very interesting part in your life. What was it like for you just being in there, being in the culture? Were you able to make friends easily? What was your experience like once you got there?
For everybody listening, as you're thinking about this, I want you to think about one of those environments where you get up in front of people and you feel like you have to change who you are. That's what it was like for me. I get there and there was obviously some very exciting things, but also some very not exciting things. I thought to myself that it would be really good to go into a school full time. I was doing homeschool at the time, and I thought it'd be cool to go to a school. And I had this enamored idea of what it would look like just to be dropped into the middle of school. My dad thought it was a great idea. He's quite adventurous. He's extremely extrovert. So he brings me to an inner city, all Mexican school where none of them had actually met Americans at that point in time. And Mazatlan was not a super Americanized country or area at that time. Movies took about 6 months to get there. So he brings me to the school and he went to speak to the principal. And he goes, Mike, if you don't have to go, if you don't want to stay, you don't have to. Well, the moment he left me, I realized I didn't want to stay there. And he leaves and he comes out to the principal and says, I enrolled you. See you later. I'll pick you up at 2:30. And the whole school, the entire elementary school, teachers, everybody surrounded me, pointed at me. And I did not fit in. And when you're that age, you just want to fit in. That's all you want to do. And kids would literally run to me, touch me, and run away. Or run to me and say, what's your name? Run away. And the entire school. And I'm backing up against the wall like a cornered dog, feeling just extremely fragile in that moment. It got to a point where I was getting so anxious to go to school because I'd have to stand up in front of people and try to read the words like everybody else would. And other people would slip in some swear words. So I'm cussing on stage and I didn't know it. I'm saying everything ridiculous, like, hola, Mike. I mean, it just was awful. Everybody's laughing at me. And I would go a psychosomatic sickness for the first couple of years because I would be so terrified of being in front of people. I talk about some trauma. Now there's some ups and downs, right? So I met some friends and everything. It wasn't really until 9th grade that I really found a way to fit in. It took me a while. And I held on to the past far longer than I should have. And just FYI to everybody right now, man, the rear view mirror looks great, but you can't go back in life. And you can back it up in a car, but you can't go back in life. And I probably wasted some really good times by trying to go back far too long. But eventually got to a spot where I could and really embrace the culture. There was some really crazy things that happened during that time because I wanted to fit in so much. And I figured out that I was getting in trouble for being a class clown. I wasn't being a class clown. I was just speaking Spanish really poorly and making everybody laugh. But when everybody calls you something, you start to think that that's you. And when the teacher was giving me in trouble for being a class clown in 7th grade, I leaned into that. And I became the very thing that I really wasn't. I was quite a serious kid, but it really became this class clown simply because that's what everybody told me I was. And I leaned into that. I leaned into that kind of party mode. It wasn't until 9th grade that I found that footing. So looking back at that, to your question, there were some horrific experiences that stayed with me for years. But some of the best friends I have in life still today are people that I met that stayed with me and grew with me. And some even apologized. Oh man, I'm so sorry. We gave you such a hard time back then. We were jerks. Well, you're in middle school, right? That's a fun time.
Once again, talking to Mike Acker, and man, that's why I want to get that part of the story, because that just shows me, if you fast forward to today, I mean, you have a book called Speak with Confidence, and we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But before we do that, when you started to explore into speaking professionally and doing all these great things with big top brands, was that something that you always planned? Was that your goal, or was there more to it?
For all those entrepreneurs out there, there's a couple different ways to go about entrepreneurship. And one is to create your big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, and plot your course for it. There's another way, which is you're eating a cookie, and the cookie is like you're seeing all these kind of crumbles, and you follow the crumbles to see where the rest of the cookies are. So I was doing my own thing. I was eating a cookie. I was working in corporate consultative sales. I had done a whole bunch of speaking, and now I was more in this corporate world and going to go that route. But I had this trail of cookie crumbs that I just decided to kind of follow, and it led me to a whole nother stash. That's probably a horrible analogy, but it came up in my mind right now, so we're there. And it was more, well, I'm doing this on the side. And my side hustle that I had no plan on being a side hustle, it was simply a hobby that I enjoyed that, yeah, I charged money for and coaching. And yet it just developed and developed. So the way that I got to spot where I'm at right now is I'm working a full-time job over here, enjoying that, and I'm coaching on the side. Literally, it was my go to Vegas and gamble money. That's how I'd spent the last amount that I had amassed. And so I had, a couple $1,000s on the side from coaching, and I would coach here and coach there. And sometimes I'd dial it up and sometimes I'd dial it down. And finally I had this one client, and she said, I just wrote this book and it's getting huge traction. I'm going to a conference. I said, well, how'd you do that? And she told me that, I went to Chandler Bolt's self-publishing school and I read his book. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll do that. Just out of curiosity, I read his book. I thought, I could do that. She's younger than me. She doesn't have any more experience than me. And so Rachel Richards, who now is a friend of mine, I coached her for this event, and she coached me and helped me publish my first book. And my goal at that point in time was not a BHAG. My goal was, hey, I spent some money on this. I want to recoup that and maybe help out a couple people. But as soon as the book went out there, I started getting calls, and I'd be driving my car in my job. And they say, hi, is this Mike? Or I'd pick up and hi, this is Mike. And they'd say, is this Mike Acker? Yeah, this is Mike Acker. And he said, oh, I'm so-and-so. I work for the king of this country. Oh. And that was when I realized that I had something. And then the book got picked up by Forbes and a whole bunch of other places. It sold 10,000 copies in the first year. It's gone on to get over 1,000 reviews. That one's called Speak with No Fear. I wrote a second book while I was flying around. That one is now sitting at 140 reviews on Amazon. It's been picked up by several universities on how to write speeches. And at this point in time, the pandemic happened. And now I was grounded and couldn't travel. So I leaned into my coaching business. And this is when I had people start reaching out to me for corporate work. Dallas International School to train their teachers, such and such companies for doing this, Adobe to speak to their designers, and a whole bunch of different places. And so it became this almost surreal moment. I remember the first time I was flown to work with a group of executives in California, and I was sitting with this group, and I thought, Oh, I wouldn't have thought that I would be here a couple of years ago, but here I am adding value to them and to their organization. And it all started with a side hustle, with a book that I worked really hard on, and then just keep on following that until I was risky enough to say, let's go full time.
Once again, let's start on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest, Mike Acker, executive communication coach, corporate trainer, and a published author. And to add to what you said too, it sounds like you created good relationships along the way. And speaking to that, how valuable have those relationships helped position you to where you have the platform that you have now?
Yeah, the best clients that I have are long-term clients at this point in time. We've been doing work together for a while. A CEO of this company and this organization over here that's brought me in a couple different times. This association that's now brought me into several of different of their members. And really, if you think about it, there's a thought, right? There's a sentence of or a description, lifetime value. And sometimes we turn people into a nomenclature and we just say, this is what you are. We categorize them. But really, what we really need to be thinking about is not just lifetime value in terms of what can we get from them, but what can we give over the long haul. And I firmly believe, I love that classic statement, right, from Zig Ziglar, the more people that you can help get what they want, you'll be able to get what you want. And so there's been times where I've given and not received much for a long time. And then there's ones on the other way around. If I go back to that initial relationship with Rachel, I mean, it's been incredible to see that friendship that's developed over the course of time. We've now known each other for 3 years. And so those friendships, those people, there's the most financial value that we're able to give each other, but also the most encouraging, which is a different type of value that we give each other. So I don't categorize them as something, I categorize them as friends.
And man, with that, it's time to talk about the book, man. Speak with confidence, overcome self-doubt, communicate clearly, and inspire your audience. Man, Mike, what was your goal when you wrote this? What's the main core that you're hoping the readers will be able to take away when they finish reading this book?
I want people to realize that where they are is not where they have to stay. So communication is a universal advantage. That means whether you're a truck driver, whether you are a mom, stay-at-home mom, or a corporate CEO, a student, communication is one of the 5 drivers of success. It is one of those things that can take you to the next level. No matter where you are or what you do, communication can help you level up. So if you were right now to grade yourself on a 1 to 10, 10 being high, 1 being low, how high are you in your nervousness and your insecurity and your anxiety in speaking? Now let's do another rating. How high are you in confidence from a 1 to 10? What you want is your nervous, your anxiety to go down and your confidence to go up. Anxiety is often the concern of what's to come. And then depression is often the things of what happened, but anxiety is often the things to come. And confidence is where's your trust? So con actually is a modifier. Fidere is to trust. So it's a modified, an extra trust. Where's your confidence? Do you have confidence and do you have reason for confidence in yourself? Not above 10 where arrogance lies and not at, well, you got 0 anxiety, which is where apathy is. You want a tiny bit of nervousness when it comes to speaking, and you want a good dose of confidence. That's where you're going to be most effective. That's what's going to elevate you to that next level. If you're having a hard time getting promoted in your career, if you're having a hard time for your brand taking off, if you're having a hard time getting your message out there, it's probably because the levels are mixed. And you need to get the levels to where they need to be. A 1 or 2 on nervousness, so there's still that energy, and then a 9, an 8, 9, 10 on confidence. And not beyond that, because I said that's arrogance. So that's my goal. My goal is for people to realize their potential, to level up, to take a hold of the advantage that communication provides.
And with your book, you're helping people to begin to attract opportunities. And before we let you go, touch on that, how using these skills and these different processes will help the reader position themselves to attract new opportunities.
Yeah, think about it like this. On your resume, there is a spot for education and experience. And your resume may get you noticed, but your interview gets you the job. And so it's very, very clear that if you don't have that added level of communication, it's going to become a barrier for you. Think about it like this. Communication and leadership go hand in hand. There are some people who are phenomenal leaders. And in fact, they can get things done through people. They make things happen. But we don't see that they're great leaders because their communication is poor. Some of the best leaders, those who get things done in spite of their communication. Now, there are some speakers who people assume are great leaders because they get up on stage and they wow people and people go, oh, man, I want to be like that. Oh, yeah, I want to do what that person says. So sure, they're speaking, they're leading through their speaking, but they're not actually able to structure, to strategize. They just get up and have a great ability to impress. But man, if you have both, see, leadership without speaking pulls leadership down. Speaking without leadership pulls perceived leadership up. But if you have both, that's where you get that executive presence. That's where you get that wow. This is what happened to me. Not that I'm the best of any of these, but I was sitting around at a barbecue with a couple friends, and I was looking at a career change several years ago. And hey, I can speak, I can do that. And I have a good amount of emotional intelligence, so I can do that. I didn't have education or experience in the field that my friend had, but I was talking to him about just maybe doing something different. He goes, I'd hire you in a heartbeat. So my ability to communicate and the work that I've done in taking those classes and getting mentored and getting coaching and reading the books and with emotional intelligence got me to a spot where quite literally I got hired for something I didn't have the education for. They would have never looked at my resume. I had zero experience for it. And I got hired over a lot of other applicants. This isn't a look at me. This is a, hey, you can do this too. Because one of the reasons why communication is so powerful is that anyone can become a better speaker. Anyone can become a better communicator. And in Speak with Confidence, the framework I lay out is this. It starts with your identity. Who are you? One of the reasons why a lot of people aren't confident is because they don't know who they are. So they're not confident in who they bring to the stage, and they're looking for the validation of others instead of understanding the value they bring. So I dive into that. And then we go into the messaging. Another reason why a lot of people aren't confident is because the moment they get asked that question or are told that they're going to speak, they don't know what they're going to say. And so I help people find their message and how to say what they're going to say. And then the third reason people aren't confident is because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to deliver intonation and eye contact and hand gestures and what to do with their body. I quite literally have clients who say, I don't know what to do with myself. So in Speak with Confidence, I put this holistic approach. It's a 3-prong approach where you work on your identity as a speaker, your messaging as a speaker, and your skills as a speaker. And when you get that, just like we said, it helps you attract the jobs, the upgrades, the promotions, and the people you want in your life.
Once again, you've been listening to I'm Refocused Radio, talking to our guest for today, Mike Acker, the executive communication coach, corporate trainer, and also published author. You can go get his book on Amazon, man. Speak with Confidence. You want to get that today. Very powerful interview today. And visit his website. His website is easy, mikeacker.com. You also have a Get Speaker packet on your website. Before we let you go, can you touch on that and some of the resources people can obtain when they go to your site?
Yeah. On there, you can find places where I do private coaching with people. I do some corporate training. I was just on the call with somebody before this about doing a conference. So right there, I have the ability to go out and speak to people and more on a motivational or of training. So you can find those on my website, mikeacker.com, as well as a link to the book available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or you can get it through your own bookstore. This is published through Wiley. So if you're familiar with Patrick Lencioni, that kind of stuff, it's the same publisher that published him.
Man, doing big things, man. See, that is why people who listen to this need to take notes, to take action, because that's what happens when you do what Mike is doing and you're just doing it. See, we all can think happy thoughts, but until we actually start taking those steps, we're not going to go where we want to go in life. So, man, I want to say thank you for your time, not just be on the show, but the value brought with the stories and the action steps that people can take. If you could say one more thing to a listener, someone who they really want to do big things and they're ready, they're hungry, they want to take that next step, what would you say to that individual, generally speaking?
Success in the area that you want to find it is going to be found in one of three, or is going to be found and determined by three different factors. Your knowledge, do you know how to get to where you want to go? If you don't, get after it, study it, find out. If you want to get on the radio, study it as a career. If you want to become a speaker, study it. If you want to start a business, if you want to bake amazing cookies, whatever it might be, you got to study it. So if you want to do something great, you want to find success in there, it's going to be determined by your level of knowledge. And then the second one is your starting point. So where you are is not where you have to stay. But you do need to find out where your starting point is. In other words, if I were going to run a marathon, right now my starting point is I can run about 5 miles. If you said, let's go run, that's about what I could do without injuring myself right now. But maybe somebody else listening, you can run a half marathon. So your starting point is further along. Maybe someone else can barely get out of the couch. So your starting point is further back. Now that's going to be a determining factor in your success. So where's your starting point in whatever goal that you have? Now, the good thing is the starting point doesn't determine where you end. It just determines where you start. And you do need to know it so that you can plot out your progress. And then here's the last one, your commitment. If I can barely get off the couch and you can run a half marathon, but you do nothing and I work my butt off every single day, I will surpass you. So it's my commitment, my drive, my action that gets it. So what is your starting point for your goal? How far along are you? What's your knowledge? Where can you get your knowledge? And then what will you do to get there?
Once again, man, been listening to Refocus Radio, talking to our guest for today, Mike Acker, the executive communication coach, corporate trainer, and published author. You can go to his website, mikeacker.com. And if you're ready to start on your starting point, I would say go get his book, Speak with Confidence, on Amazon, anywhere you can get a book, and start that process today. Put the money where your mouth is. Don't just talk about it, be about it. So, man, first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Mike, for being on the show and taking time in your schedule, man, spending time with us.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.